Hey guys, my name is Mika. Today I'm going to discuss the issue whether government departments have well connect with each other in New Zealand. This presentation focuses on three ways: planning of taxation and appropriation, trends of responsibility and accountability, financial accounting and performance accounting, how they relate to this issue and why it's important, argue the two sides of issue, and the conclusion. Taxes in New Zealand are collected at a national level by the Inland Revenue Department. Inland Revenue Department is the public service department of New Zealand charged with advancing the government on tax policy, collecting and disbursing payments for social support programs. The departments administer the following social support programs: working for families, pay parental leaves, child support, student loan debit, and Kiwi savers. Also collecting tax. The national taxes are levied on personal and business income and on the supply of goods and service. Appropriation are the base on which Parliament authorities the executive government incur expense and capital expenditure. Without parliamentary authority, the government has no authorization to incur expense and capital expenditure and spend public money, and therefore cannot govern. As such, appropriations are an important aspect of both constitutional framework of New Zealand and the state sector management system. This guide focuses on those rules for appropriation outlined in the Public Finance Act 1989. The Minister of Finance may approve expenses or capital expenditure in excess of appropriations within the following limits. Expenditure must be within the scope of an existing appropriation. The expenditure in excess of a appropriation must be incurred in last 3 months of the fiscal years, and the cumulative total of such approves of a single appropriation might only be up to the greater of $10,000 or 2% of the appropriation. So the following page are definitions of responsibility and accountability. Please have a look. Accountability can most succinctly and precisely be described as answerability. Having accountability exclusively means a necessity and the expectation to explain one's action for whatever they are accountable for. Responsibility is the idea of being completely in charge of something, that the person who is responsible for something is the root cause by behind whatever that things succeeds, fail, lives, or dies. The separation of power is a model for the governments of states. The typical division of branch is into a legislature, an executive, and a judiciary. A legislature is a deliberative assembly with the authority to make laws for a political entity, such as a country or city. Legislatures form important parts of most governments. The executive is the organ that exercises authority in and holds responsibility for the governments of the states. The executive executes and info law. The judiciary is the system of courts that applies the law in the name of the states. The head of New Zealand is a different person from the head of government. The head of government often is the de facto leader, prime minister, overseeing the administration of all affairs of the states. Parliament is a legislative, elect body of governments. The Parliament has three functions: representing the electorate, making laws, and overseeing the government. Members of executive are called ministers. A minister is a politician who holds significant public office in a national or regional government, making and implied decisions on policies in conjunction with the other ministers. The Minister of Finance is Bill English. The Minister of Finance responsibility is producing an annual New Zealand budget outlining the government's proposed expenditure. According to Parliament's stating orders, the Minister of Finance may vote any parliamentary bills which would have a significant impact on the government's budget plans. The Minister of Finance also supervises the Treasury, which is the government's primary advisor on the matters of economic and financial policy. As such, the Minister of Finance have broad control of the government's spending, making the position quite powerful. Let's move to financial and performance accounting. Financial forecasting and reporting by the New Zealand government complies with public sector PBE accounting standards. These standards are based largely on national public sector accounting standards. Financial statements are prepared for the government as a whole as specified in Public Sector Finance Act 1989. The history of standard setting for financial reporting in New Zealand public sector is notable for the decade from the early 1990s, when standard setters aimed to produce sector-neutral standards. In Accounting 211, Financial Accounting course, we describe public sectors as public benefit entities. So what is public entities? A reporting entity whose primary objective is to provide goods or service for community or social benefit, and where any equity has been provided with a view to supporting that primary objective, rather than for a financial return to equity holders. Of the government provide a record of the government's financial performance and its financial positions. They provide a comparison with fiscal forecasts in the economics and fiscal updates, and with the financial statements of prior years. The financial statements also provide a snapshot of the progress the government has made in implementing its fiscal strategy. How they relate to this issue and why it's important. I will argue the two sides of the issue. The main reason for I post this issue is I read the article written by Duncan, who's responsible for the states we are in. The article is talk about governments and public sector have accountability, responsibility to deliver public service to residents of the country, and how they do it. Departments must have connection with each other. So I start to think of whether the government's departments have good connection. It's important because it directly concerns to people who live in New Zealand. Let's talk about more specifically. There is a quite good examples for the positive side, the Inland Revenue and the Treasury. Those two departments have well connect with each other. They having chance while performing owns accountability and responsibility, share data and information with each other, cooperate with each other.
According to Budget New Zealand
2016, from those two graphs, we could see the main source of course revenue is taxation revenue. Inland Revenue Department collecting data from us, and the Treasury spend revenue on our public service. I'd love call it virtuous circle
because
the Treasury need to correct the plan of taxation and appropriation. We only need to pay this education fee, and when people got sick and need to see doctor, they only need to pay $45, or sometimes they don't have to pay anything. When people lost their job, they could apply unemployment relief. Be honest, I feel so lucky that I'm living in New Zealand. In China, we need to pay a lot of money for kids' education, and if people want to see doctor and buy medicine, they have to pay a lot. On the other side, what happens if departments doesn't have good connection? The Auditor General, Kevin, point out he's so disappointed with overall quality of financial report standards applying to most entities in the public sector. In his view, the approach to setting financial reporting standards needs to change to ensure that appropriate standards apply to public sector's entities, so that those entities' financial statements will meet the needs of people using the statements. Also, there needs to be a significant change to the way financial report standards are set for the public sectors. It's likely to include taking more account of the work of the International Public Sector Accounting Standards Board. The focuses for change needs to be on relevance and the appropriate financial report standards that are designed to produce financial reports that are understandable and can be used by people to properly hold public sector entities to account. From this situation, we can see that there are problems between Auditor General Department and Financial Statements Standard Setting Department.
So, the conflicts cannot be avoided. But if each government department have good connection, positive work with others, rather than blame others, I believe that government's efficiency will be improved. Let's move to conclusion. This issue also is quite important
to economic growth. You cannot expect one department can fix all the problems. The departments need to have good connection, sharing correct information, meet each other's needs. Also, from this learning exercise, I know more about New Zealand's government and public sector, each department's responsibility. I start to pay more attention on economics.
Thanks for your attention.